Hi, I'm Torsten, and this is Literature and Pictures. I'm here with the one and only Bunkmaster B. How are you, dude?
What it do, comic babies? I am so happy to be back here. It has been way too long since we've done this.
Albert is a story that tells the impact of art that art has on the world and the impact that art has on art. I didn't know much going in about the series. I didn't know it was used to be the Electric Sublime, originally published on IDW or by IDW 2016 to 2017, and then published by Image just a couple of years ago, December 2022 through 2023, and then the OHC is from 2023 as well. There are some some additions. I don't know. Do the single issues have those additional, like the throwback to the Silver Age parts?
The continuing.
Because I think those are not part of the Electric Sublime.
No. W. Maxwell Prince is a guy that if he's coming out with a new project, and actually this is an old project, but when he's coming out with a new project, I buy it in singles to support, and then usually I'll double dip when there's like a premium format. So I buy Ice Cream Man, which is their big project that's ongoing, in singles. I'm hoping that now that they've gone from the Electric Sublime to Art Brut, we do get more stories coming from this universe, and then maybe they'll do like a big thick OHC. These are the originals. So we talked about how this series originated as the Electric Sublime when it was originally out. And then when it was re-released on Image, and they did some touch-ups, particularly the lettering. By the way, the full cast on this, W. Maxwell Prince is the writer, Martín Morazzo is the illustrator, colors is Matt Lopez, with Chris O'Halloran doing some touch-ups, and then the letterer is Good Old Neon, which is W. Maxwell Prince's pseudonym that he does when he does lettering. In the Electric Sublime, it was credited as W. Maxwell Prince, and there's even a joke. That panel that you sent me about, it used to be called the Electric Sublime, and he said, like, at least the lettering's better. So he's touched it up since then, and like that's one of the big things. But it's not just the backups that I have. So this is from issue 3. This is when they go into the painting to see Vox. That's one of my favorite images of Arthur, just so triumphant with his paintbrush forward. The guys have Vox there, and then on the next page, woo. But right up here, where Morazzo is writing up at the top, you can see it's written as the Electric Sublime, whereas in those earlier pages, those backup Silver Age, sort of pulp features in the continuing adventures of Art Brut, the title is given the billing of Art Brut.
But Vincent van Gogh is
so European.
Van Gogh is.
I also love that you're jumping right to the very end, and you're like, by the way, here's the spoiler for the last page of the book right there.
But that's kind of what this is about, because up until then, you basically just have a whodunit story, like. I mean, and that's fun. It's a fun chase, the fun, like, getting behind who done it. I'm super have no problem with getting familiar with the world they're in. Like, yeah, there's this guy who can dream paint, and he jumps into the paintings, and the paintings are being altered from within, not from the outside. But that's just the world building, right? It's just okay. This is the world they're in. if you just go with it, if you're fine with that world and it's not too weird to you, then the actual story doesn't happen until later. But that's why I'm also so glad that I read this book twice, because my first read was like, oh, this is genius. I mean, also after the second read, I thought it was genius, but in a different way. That the guy that is insecure about his own art, that hates his imperfections even within his own art.
Oh, you mean every artist?
Yeah, I don't know. There might be some so egocentric, narcissistic ones that don't think negatively about their own. Of course, they want to get better, but
at least according to Declan Shalvey, every artist has their own and like sees every imperfection in their own art. And Declan's a guy I would trust.
And there's this great quote in there. Art BRUT says, that's what happens when you try to make something. You want it to be so perfect, but everything you do is just a betrayal of your hopes for your thing. Stuff comes out all wrong. It can drive you crazy. That's kind of the essence of this book. And but yeah, if you describe every artist with that, it's like every artist goes crazy with the thought of they have an intention of making something. It comes out differently. Sometimes it's better and it's more appreciated. Sometimes it's not, but it hardly ever is what they intended to do. Van Gogh being the guy behind it. And I know that's the main spoiler. Is it though? But it's
the last reveal. I wouldn't say it's
unless you read it twice, then there's another reveal in your second read that you don't catch in the first. You can't catch in the first one unless you know the end.
Honestly, I had forgotten, because I do think, to your point about, it's the last reveal, but it's not a major spoiler. When I reread this last week to get ready for this, I honestly forgot that it was that Van Gogh is that last page reveal. I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. But like, when I think of the crux of the story, like that's not what I think about. To me, so much about it like is this story to me is talking about sort of the legacy of art, both what the artist creates and then what the observers and sort of the quote unquote art world makes that art to be. And so the idea is that like the artist themselves makes both the art and then the world of the electric sublime, the world beyond the painting initially, but then the observers are the ones that sort of like change it and touch it. And it's only those truly gifted, once we get that new artist that's able to sort of put a previous work in new light, like we get the kid who's able to I can't remember the term for it, but the one, our main one, who really shapes sort of the history behind the art and changes sort of the way that we look at it. And, the one who goes in and changes the legacy of the Mona Lisa that has that, is it just painting. Dream painters? Because that's dream painting is what Arthur does.
Yeah.
But
the other ones.
But either way, like that's the crux of it, and the way that it like visualizes it, I think is very, very classic. And just the idea that we're art is, especially the fine art world, is sometimes feels very foreign, and it feels sort of impenetrable, especially when you do get sort of particular movements like the renamed series Art BRUT. The entire style is art of outsiders. Like the idea is that it's the artists creating from the outside of sort of traditional modes. Prisoners, different things like that is sort of traditionally what Art BRUT is. So it talks about, you have that right there in the name. It speaks a lot about the Dada movement, which was, an early 20th century movement against art itself. And a lot of that can be sort of like hard to pierce on the surface. And the idea that like, basically it's distilling these like very like impenetrable things and putting them in a digestible way where it's also a crime story. I thought was a really clever sort of mashup of like high concept and low concept and putting them together.
Art is based on other art. So you have every painter or every artist is inspired by someone else. art brut wants to preserve the art as it is, and you have the counterpart, the corrections or the correction that changes that art. But in itself is an art form. So that's why, to me, the second time reading this, Dylan is the main character here. That's the boy. He's the artist, because he uses the existing art to change everything, to create the correction. Because if you go back, that's what I mean with second time reading. And the first time reading, he created the cow, or he killed the cows by drawing dead cows, and then suddenly the cows are dead.
Which is life imitates art, sort of the concept writ large.
But that's his creation. Although again, in this universe, he has the ability, by what he paints comes true. He paints something, it changes the art. He paints something, it changes reality. He paints his own death, and that's exactly how he gets killed. Like, there's this sheet of him drawing his own death after he got killed, and you see it, it's like, oh, because he drew it, it happened. So once you know Van Gogh is the big baddie, you see him drawing Van Gogh in one of the first pages. And the whole thing is based on Dylan's art. Everything that happens in here is what Dylan drew first. So he drew Van Gogh, he drew the cow. The cows is just like a little hint, like push in the right direction. He drew the changes. And the corrections themselves are the art piece created by Dylan, because the correction is what then goes and does their thing. They go and change existing art. They go and kind of carry out Van Gogh's will of destroying imperfections, which in his universe, in his mind, means destroying all existing art, because nothing is perfect. His creation are the correction, and the correction being a new art piece. Just because it's destroying something doesn't make it less valuable. It's like maybe more controversial, but it's an art piece in itself, because it's contemporary art. You have other artists that are working with such elements. And Dylan is being the artist in here who creates all of that.
I think one of the important parts that you talk about there is just sort of the idea of Arthur and Dylan as sort of opposite forces in their view to art. And one of the most impactful moments, when Dylan meets Arthur at the end, after the whole confrontation with Vox, and when they're going and they're in the dream space, and Arthur tells him that you're a tumor and you're killing art. I think that's really impactful, because I want to say the first time that I read it, I saw Arthur as our main character, and I saw Arthur as sort of like our hero. And it was like, oh yeah, he's doing what needs to be done. And then the second time you read it, you realize it's just sort of, that's his artistic perspective. So he's someone that's going in, that's saying that you're a tumor that's killing art. As in his mind, that's true. But what Dylan is, in reality is doing is, some would say that he is creating his own art. He's not killing art. He's making his own art. And it's these two sort of conflicting forces of art as it has been and art as it will be. And I thought that was really interesting as the way that we sort of see it there. To you pointing out that, the idea that Dylan is actually the main character, that this isn't a story that's necessarily about Arthur, that you could actually look at Arthur being the antagonist, but he's the character that we're sort of the ride along with. He's the one who is holding the story back from progressing, trying to keep things as status quo, him and the whole art bureau itself.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far as saying Arthur is the antagonist, but
and in the classic, the protagonist is the person who moves the story along. The antagonist is the one who tries to get it to stop, not the good guy versus the evil guy, which too often it goes, but just in a very classic literary sense, who is the one that is the driver of the plot, and who is the one that tries to oppose that.
Yeah. No, in that sense, yeah. I mean, Arthur is very reactive. He only tries to fix things, put them back into how they were, as you said, and that's why I like the editions, the Silver Age editions at the end of each chapter that basically show his path. Like it ends after the fourth part of how the book starts, so it's kind of the prequel and how Arthur basically helps to fix. He has this personal relationship to art, and he goes and helps those people, like the woman with the earring. She helps, like the clams want their pearl back, and you got some original art there from the clams that I was just talking about. So the clams want to have their pearl back, and he has that personal connection to the person, and he helps her get her earring back.
In the continuing adventures of Art Brut, the title is given the billing of Art Brut.
Yeah, I think he hated like W. Maxwell Print. I hated the original title. And it shines through. Like he comments on it saying like, yeah, why, like, I don't know why anyone would name it like that. I think there was editorial that made him pick that title or change that title.
Possibly. I mean, it doesn't mean anything on its surface. The idea was that like it was the world beyond the painting, but you know, if Art Brut means something as soon as you hear it, even if you don't necessarily know what the Art Brut movement is, like Art Brut gives you a feeling. What's the Electric Sublime about? Yeah. Is it about a submarine? Oh, could be. Is it about a guy who drops a whole bunch of acid? Pretty likely. I don't know. Could be anything. Not selling a whole lot of books that way.
Yeah. Now I read somewhere that it was editorial, and he was never happy with it. And then they changed a bunch of stuff though. When they republished it as Art Brut, there's some other word bubbles that come out there are not in the Electric Sublime, because after seeing that word bubble and like comparing Electric Sublime that I then like found digitally and compared it to this book, I went through some other pages. Nothing important though, but there's one or two or three scenes where like there's a word bubble just like I think when the correction when they're coming in and killing the class or like something like that, there's some word bubble and some sound effects that are added in this, so you don't only get an updated version and kind of the throwback prequel Silver Age style stories at the end of those chapters.
Which I have to say, I really liked them as a pace setter. Because like I said, Art Brut is weird. Art Brut is out there, and without those to sort of like reset what you're doing and kind of like give you a little bit of like okay, like here's just a little bit of just like outright pulp nonsense. And also they throw some German your way in those. So, you know, there was at least one sentence I remember that was in German there. So
I can't remember what it was, but yeah.
I think it was Life is Terrible. It was, I really enjoyed those as kind of a fun way, and also it just sort of like fleshes out the world, because the idea is you come on to Arthur, where at the beginning of he's already an established character within the art world. You need the dream painter to come and do this, and then we get to see basically these previous art superhero stories he did where he saved previous paintings, and just like I thought it was fun, and it was almost like a nice little sorbet before you get back to that weirdness.
It's also the story itself, like kind of metaphorical for art taking on a life of itself after it is created. Like the creator has an intention, that intention isn't met, but after it's out there, it takes on its own life. Like no one knows what the Mona Lisa was intended to be. The whole fun of this is the guessing part.
Yeah, and I think part of that too is just the idea that once you release art into the world, it doesn't belong to the artist anymore. It belongs to the world, to the observer. And that kind of, again, that idea about there's the world that the painter creates, and then there's the world that the observer creates from that.
Yeah. So when I read it the first time, I was like, oh, this is a great like introduction to this world, to the characters. This gotta continue. Reading it the second time and thinking, okay, maybe this was all created by Dylan and Dylan is dead. Maybe that's has an end that it deserves. And Arthur being in a spot that he is at the end, maybe it's an end. But I still think there's room for more stories there.
But here's the thing, though. As we saw right there, the painting doesn't end with the end of the painter. The painter is the one who creates the world, but it's the observer and the rest of the world that changes it and define what that's going to be. So sure, Dylan may be dead, but his creations aren't. We still have, because Dylan's already dead at the end when the the guy that was married to the one who was married to Marilyn Monroe, the pop art painter,
Andy Warhol.
Yeah, thank you. We see Andy Warhol going to confront him. Dylan's already dead at that point, so the painting is already in motion. We already know also that Arthur, he's lost his eye at that point, mirroring the ear that's been lost by Van Gogh. We already saw at the beginning that Arthur is basically taken from his stasis in the mental ward. He's gone off on his own. It would be so easy to pick this up, and I hope they do. That's the sense that we get from where number 4 goes off. There hasn't been any word of that happening. I want to say the last issue of Art Brut came out. Actually, I don't know why I'm saying I can.
Last year, well, they republished again. Do you know why they republished it? Just to bring this series back to everyone's conscience. They thought they could do something more there. I mean, they added
March 2023, so it's going on a year and a half. The only thing I can imagine is that they want to do more in this world. If they wanted to just put it back out with it being a creator-owned property, it'd be super easy to just release a trade paperback. But the fact that they went out, they released this issue by issue, they added the backup matter that went with it. This tells me that this is something that they want to do. And on top of that, Morazzo and W. Maxwell Prince are a pretty established team that work together quite a bit. So Ice Cream Man is their big one that they do. But really, anytime that there's a chance for them to work together, they do.
I'd buy a continuation. I love the world that they're in. I love the theme. I love the concept of how they're approaching this, and it doesn't even have to be the same characters. I mean, it's been established that there are more than one dream painter, so there could be someone else's story in the same universe.
The only problem, though, is it's named Art Brut now. And that's after Arthur.
He could become a mentor.
He could do a Yoda or Obi-Wan Kenobi.
And he seems sane in those paintings. He's not that sane outside of them. Also kind of like a notch there, like artists that seems eccentric in the real world, and then their art comes out genius, and they seem to be secure in what they're doing with what they're doing, and aren't equipped to handle the real world necessarily. So maybe also some reference there.
One of the things I really liked with the re-release, the cover B for issue 1 is an homage to Ice Cream Man #1. So I love them homaging their own work together. So I don't typically buy multiple covers. This is the cover A, and I believe this was the original cover of the Electric Sublime. But when this was one that they did specifically for the release on this, and I just love that. Like, I couldn't not pick that up.
Awesome.
All right,
I
cool.
have nothing to add to this. So that would conclude our review of BRUT, which, is an amazing book. Pick it up if you haven't.
The hardcover is oversized. Had no idea. I might have just sent you my single issues and bought the budget oversized for myself if I knew.
Better copy than you. I believe there is.
I mean, that being said, though,
the covers.
You may have the OHC, but I do have my art's still bigger than yours.
Yeah, but I got an art gallery here.
Yeah, I mean, I also have an art gallery.
You do. I'm not saying the one you just showed. Not saying that this version can compete with the original art.
No,
I'm checking. I'm just looking at what the extras are to maybe
I'm just
context here.
Trying to tell myself I don't need to go out and buy that hardcover.
Oh no, you definitely do. But no, there's no forward, no afterward. So yeah, the extras are literally just the covers, and you already have some variants there. So other than oversized art, should be a reason it's by itself. But no, you do you.
Again, I've already spent way more money on way more oversized art. I don't. That's a double dip. I don't think I need to do.
You have half the book in actually pencil.
Inks, no pencils. Yeah, I was going to say I don't think since Morazzo inks himself, I don't think you can find the pencils anywhere. I mean, technically you can. They're just underneath the inks on that.
That was our review. Thank you for joining me today. This was Literature and Pictures. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and stay tuned for more content like this. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone who's still here. See you next time.
See ya.